Please stand for the Chairman of the Council.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Councillors. Welcome to this meeting of the Council. We don't have a chaplain today, so we'll just bypass that one. Sorry about that. Please sit down. I now have some general housekeeping announcements that I wish to be made before we start the business on the agenda. Firstly, there are no planned fire alarms this evening, so if the alarm does sound, then please leave by the emergency exit at the back of the room and assemble in the car park. Secondly, this meeting is recorded. When you speak, please ensure your microphone is switched on and please speak clearly. Finally, recording, filming and reporting of the public part of this meeting is allowed, but please do so in accordance with the protocol which is clearly displayed in the room. And please ensure that all mobile devices are switched off to silent. We'll now go to agenda item 1, apologies. Are there any apologies for absence?
Yes, Mr Chair, we have apologies from Councillor Troughton, Councillor Kane and Councillor Wally.
Apologies, Mr Howe. And Chairman.
Mr Chair, apologies from P and Wilson, Brian OK and John Deere.
Councillor McAtee, will you address?
I want to apologies for apparently corrupt, please.
Might won't go on, Mr Chairman. But Councillor Sutherland, apologies please.
No more apologies? We go on to agenda item 2, declaration of interest. Members with disposable pecuniary interest or any other disposable non-pecuniary interest, please declare them now or do so as soon as they arise. Agenda item 3, minutes of the special meeting held on the 3rd of December 2015.
Mr Mayor,
Are the minutes agreed as a correct record?
Mr Mayor, before we start, could I just tell you that I will be abstaining from whether they are a correct record or not. Because for several days now I've tried to download the council minutes and I've failed. So I haven't received any notification of the meeting, I haven't received any minutes of the meeting, and I haven't received any minutes of the previous meeting. Can I just say, talking to some of our councillors who have also had the same problem, have been issued with hard copies. I feel it's totally unacceptable for one of the most important meetings of the year that councillors have not had access to the necessary papers.
Do you want to respond to that?
Have you made someone aware of that, Alan, or did you haven't received it?
I've been trying to do it. I've finished up using the minutes of the OSC, of the budget report I meant to OSC. That's all I've been able to get over.
Well, did you notify anybody?
No. I've been trying up to today and I just couldn't do it.
It's, we'll have a look at the issue, but without notification there's a problem. It's, what we don't know. But yeah, we'll certainly look into why there has been a problem with the IT.
I fully understand that. Whenever I've had a problem and I've asked, no, you cannot have a hard copy, Yet there are members sitting in here today who have been given hard copies because they've had a similar problem. When I've asked for a hard copy, I've been denied.
Yeah, point taken on what we'll take that on board. I understand the frustration with that.
Okay,
Is there a hard copy that I can use, or do I just read?
Councillor Roberts?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Just a typo on the minutes. C41, that should read prejudicial, not pecuniary. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So can we accept the minutes as a record? Agreed? Agenda item 4, minutes of the ordinary meeting held on the 3rd of December 2015. Are the minutes agreed as a correct record?
Agreed.
Agreed? Agenda item 5 is written questions from members of the public. We don't have any questions from members of the public at the moment in time. Agenda item 6 is questions by councillors. Item 6A, oral questions to the Mayor. If you have questions on the budget, they should not be asked here, but during the consideration of the budget proposals at item 7, we do have any questions, matters that other than the budget, please. So in other words, any question must be asked, but nothing to do with the budget. Councillor Bradshaw.
Thank you, Chairman. It's becoming very difficult to keep up with the frequent changes of meetings and the locations that they are being held in. So it's very important that members take note of the weekly list. Can the Mayor provide an update on the relocation of the staff to the ground floor of the Copeland Centre? And when will we be able to hold meetings in our new council chamber?
In terms of the accommodation update, I will be organising a full briefing of all members to bring you up to date with timescales, what the plans look like for how the accommodation works, and that will be organised pretty soon now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I have your assurance that we will be having a council chamber downstairs when we've all moved downstairs?
Pat, do you want to pick up on this one?
I think the point's well made in terms of the fact that the budget, the proposals for the accommodation have been on the books for quite some time now, and I guess the important thing and the first thing to say is that we are making this move because we have secured a tenant and a lease for the building, which is financially beneficial to the council and the community, so that's the first thing to say. We are at this moment in time putting together the programme for the accommodation move, to some degree driven by that tenant requirement, so we've just got those literally in the last couple of weeks. So we are currently putting the programme together. Absolutely, as part of that programme, we need to make sure members are fully conversant with both the operational moves and what the programme is in terms of the end stop date. The indicative date is around July in terms of when the tenant will come in, and we need to have everything in place. In terms of the council chamber itself, that there's still a decision to be made whether or not that is something we want to do in this building or not, and that is part of that consultation process. That's why, as the Mayor suggests, we want to get members back around the table just so that you're aware of those issues and concerns. We've had some learning from where we've been in terms of some of the decisions around accommodation taken by the previous administration, and some new members weren't always cited on those, so we're taking that seriously, and and that's why we'll be coming back to you very shortly.
Councillor Ray?
I understand that officers are going to lose their car parking facilities. Could I ask the Mayor why?
And that's an operational issue, so if it's okay, I perhaps can answer that. So as part of the lease arrangements that we've entered into, the tenant will require some parking spaces out the front, and that's part of the commercial negotiation and is bog standard. We have been for a couple of months now looking at a review of our staff parking and the operational requirements of our staff, given that some of the staff will be relocating to Morrisby. Some of our operational arrangements have changed. So I think it's not strictly accurate to say we are taking car parking off the staff. We're actually reviewing our car parking policy per se, which hasn't actually been reviewed for several years now and doesn't really reflect in some instances what the staff need and what the organisation needs. But I don't think we should be under illusions we are reducing the number of parking spaces available to staff, but equally at the same time we're doing that corporately, we are looking at car parking across the whole of the town and looking at additional opportunities.
Supplementary, please.
Yes.
Councillor, can you stand up?
No, stand up. I really don't see why our officers should have to pay for any parking at all. With a car park over there, we own. Let's have our officers parking for nothing over there. To say it's a revenue issue is rubbish. Wherever does an employee have to park a big charge for parking? Apart from the hospital, where does anybody have to pay at work to park?
All of Whitehaven.
What?
All the retail stores and businesses in Whitehaven have to pay.
Ah, but if you had a spare park charge...
All of those. Order! Please sit down now. Please sit down.
Employees with that for a reason. There's fully behind it. A part-time summer job possibly. If it's part-time, it's flexible working. Let's use the right language. I would ask the Mayor and the Executive to consider changing that language and putting part-time work or flexible work. Stay away from zero contracts, because we can't carve up other businesses to raise the standards and put words like that down.
Sam, Councillor Banks will pick that up to the portfolio holder.
I'll pick it up, Sam. Yes, I can agree with you. These are 0-hour contracts. They're not something that we do lightly, but they are a necessity as far as the business is concerned at this point. We are bringing about commercialisation. It's very early in our journey on this particular front, and these particular posts have been like this for many years now. They are temporary, they are part-time, and sometimes they are ad hoc. As you quite rightly said, some of these things are seasonal, and we have a whole raft of excellent attractions coming to the Beacon in the next 3 years, and until we can fully understand what we need to do to staff them, we can't really at this point have permanent part-time contracts, but we are working towards that end.
I would add to that, Sam, sometimes the 0 hours contract actually suits the workers as well. We're putting a pool together, and it's an opportunity for people within the pool to work together to sort hours out to suit themselves. The operating model for the Beacon is moving towards becoming a financially sustainable model. the 0-hour contracts, for the particular role of horseman depends a lot on footfall. It depends a lot on the individual circumstances who are applying for the job, and that gives people a foot on the employment ladder. They'll be paid fairly and equitably for the hours they work, but in the short term in particular, it suits the organisation and it suits the people who will be taking up the role.
Thanks very much for that reply. I couldn't disagree more strongly, actually. I mean, I've heard it before from bigger and better firms, but much larger firms. And it's all the same language. I know it's what you might call a minor issue, but it isn't, because it's about principles, it's about how we go forward and promote ourselves and promote other employees in the area. 0-hour contracts, you cannot get away from it, is associated with exploitation. If we're going to have part-time work, you can advertise it as part-time work with flexible hours, but move away from the 0 hours. I mean, we cannot berate other companies for being poor employees, exploiting people on low pay and contracts like this, and employ them ourselves. It's a slippery slope, and I disagree with it fundamentally.
It's certainly not exploited. We're not talking about factory units here, and you're going to take numbers of places on. The council has historically, over a long period of time, where appropriate, used 0 hours contracts. What I'm happy to do is take the points on board, and I'll put this bit of work across to the overview and scrutiny committee to have a look at where this might be appropriate and where it might not. But your points are noted, and we will look at it.
Councillor Bowman. Thank you, Chairman. Can we as elected members have a list for the last 5 years of anybody that's been employed on 0-hour contracts? Thank you.
We obviously wouldn't release personal data, but we can give you the numbers. And they're very small.
So no more questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to ask the Mayor, I know he's got an open door policy, which I think is absolutely excellent. And I'm hoping it's a mistake that when all our names were printed in the Whitehaven News, you were the only one with no home address and no private telephone number. Just want to know if that was a mistake. Thank you.
It's news to me, John. I didn't know, but it's. I'll look into it. I certainly have no objection with having my home address and my number printed. I quite willingly give that out. Home number, mobile number, address. Even to the extent where I haven't. People come knocking on my door. I don't know. Thank you.
Councillor Bradshaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does the Mayor agree with me that this government are continuing to attack the most vulnerable in our community by deferring for 12 months the proposed rent cut for those people living in specialised housing, and that he will do everything in his power to cushion the impact for those in Copeland?
In fairness, I'm not here to get into political debates and what goes on in Westminster. I think we should be doing as a council and an organisation is looking after what we control and the best interests of the people of this borough. If that at times means lobbying various government ministers and MPs, then that's what we'll do. But I prefer to leave politics to the politicians and as a local authority to focus on making a difference and creating better lives and environment for people in our local community that we serve.
Councillor Bowman. Chair, just as a point of order, I've just heard somebody call Councillor Bradshaw a bitch behind me. That is out of order, and whoever said it, I want them to stand up now and apologise, or be taken through the right procedure. It is totally irresponsible for anybody to call anybody with that language, and I will support Councillor Bradshaw. She is an effective and hard-working councillor. Might not say the things that people want to hear, but we need to be certainly treat people with respect at the very, very minimum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I shall now leave the meeting.
Mr. Mayor, it was a misunderstanding. It wasn't a pitch, it was rubbish.
It wasn't a misunderstanding, Chairman. It was an actual comment, and probably by more than one person.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sitting right behind John, and I certainly did not hear the word bitch at all.
Councillor?
Yeah, I think we can clear this up. I think the word used was rubbish, which may have been heard as bitch. It was not bitch.
Yeah, that was rubbish. Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on.
Well,
Councillor Holloway?
Mr. Chairman, can I ask Mr. Chairman, the council left the room. If the person did shout out rubbish as members of the
Councillor Holloway,
if they would apologise, then maybe the member would be allowed back in.
Councillor Holloway, will you please sit down? I haven't asked you to stand up. If you want a question, put your hand up. Councillor Donnelly?
Tonight, Mr. Chairman, as a point of clarification, the corporate statute isn't part of the budget, is it not? Or is it part of the budget? Because I'm going to ask you a question on the first page of it. So, do I ask it now or do I wait till the budget starts? Wait till the budget starts. Thank you.
Councillor Ray?
I'd just like to ask Councillor Holland this question for him. He wouldn't let him stand up and speak. Now, what was said out of order. And it needs an apology, Chair. So can we have one, please?
If the person who said it is prepared to stand up and apologise, that's fair enough with me. If she doesn't, or he, well, I can't do anything about it. We shall take a short recess until it's sorted out. I'd like to continue with this council meeting, but please have respect for each other and keep this meeting in order. We don't need any of this disruption like we just had before. Right or wrong, I'm sure at a later date this can be sorted. So I'd like to continue now with the meeting and...
Can I hear, Mr. Chairman? Sorry. Is there any more questions? Then we'll continue with agenda item 6. 6B, written questions from councillors. None have been received. Agenda item 7 is the 2016 to 2020 draft corporate strategy, medium-term financial strategy projection, and 2016-17 draft budget proposal. The Mayor will make a presentation on the executive budget proposals before we consider the report. Questions can be asked during consideration of the report and not during the presentation. We will now move from the top table to allow the screen to be displayed. After the Mayor has finished giving his presentation, the top table will move back up to the dais before we start the consider of the report.
Good evening, everybody. Everybody hear my voice okay? Is it projecting okay to the back?
Yeah.
Well, what I'm going to go through now is last week I presented the medium-term corporate strategy to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and we'll present tonight in exactly the same format as it was presented to Overview and Scrutiny. So some of the points that were raised during scrutiny will be addressed at the executive on the 11th and will be added to full council. There's a number of points raised and a number of points conceded. It was what I found, a very constructive meeting, really helpful, and it helped us fine-tune some of the stuff that we already had in the strategy. I guess for long-serving councils, it's this will be a little bit different in terms of the way it's been done before and the way it's been presented. Because what I'm keen to do is move towards a strategy-led council rather than a budget-led council. So what you'll see tonight presented is a corporate strategy and a plan for delivery, and then a budget that will underpin that. So it's really all about us setting out where we're looking to go, putting a plan in place to get there, and then looking at how we support that through the budget. So we're looking at 2016 to 20, the corporate strategy and the medium-term financial strategy. I think someone's going to have to... Well, let's be sort of the slides. In terms of putting the strategy and budget together, we've tried to show you too an unprecedented level of public engagement and consultation. That started back in October at the Open for Business conference when we laid out the vision for Copeland to over 300 delegates up at the golf club. That's been followed up by several public meetings, a further business meeting at the Milham Network Centre that was attended by 20 people in the business community, and I presented to the Brisbane's Energy Coast Business Cluster up at Energies to over 100 people. So we've had an awful lot of budget consultation and engagement from the public. We've also had a 500% increase on the online feedback, and I do pick up some of the feedback that there was some closed questions, but what we also asked for was quality feedback and give people a lot of room to write and add the comments, which virtually every respondent did, and a lot of that feedback's been taken into account. So in terms of the levels of engagement that we've undertook in pulling this together, I think it's fair to say that it is unprecedented in terms of the response and the engagement that we've gone through. What we're going to cover in the report that were considered by the Executive on the 19th of January with the 2016-2020 corporate strategy, the 2016 medium-term financial strategy projections and the draft revenue budget proposals, including a review of the reserves position statement, the proposed capital programme for 2016-17 through to 19-20, and the draft treasury management strategy and commercialisation. So the draft corporate strategy, first of all, our mission statement as a council is something to make Copeland a better place to live, work and visit. Our vision is for Copeland Council to become a commercially focused organisation with a good reputation, or a first-class reputation for high-quality service. And this whole thing is underpinned by 4 key ambitions, and 4 pillars to the strategy: town centre regeneration, commercialisation, employment skills and social well-being, and to strengthen the way we operate as an organisation. We'll deliver these ambitions by focusing on the delivery of 5 strategic outcomes for our towns, villages and streets to reflect the prosperity of this area. To grow the commercial activity of the council to benefit the people of Copeland, ensuring that the wealth generated in Copeland stays right here in Copeland, and attract businesses, professionals and entrepreneurs to Copeland and retain our talented young people, and work with partners to support the most vulnerable people in our borough. We'll continually review our services to ensure they meet the needs of the people of Copeland and ensure they're efficient and they're effective, and we'll maximise our opportunities for growth within the council and with our strategic partners. Key deliverables due in 2016 are included in the executive report of 19th of January, agenda item 5 and appendices A and B. Examples of key deliverables include a borough-wide review of car parking and implementation of a clear car parking strategy. Develop a business case to establish a trading company and an energy company to drive through income generation. Establish a local apprenticeship scheme, creating 5 apprenticeships within the council in the first year, and to continue to carry out a detailed review of finances within the council to ensure smart procurement and maximises the use of every pound we spend of public money. So in terms of the strategy and the 4 key pillars, I'll start with ambition 4. That's about strengthening the way we operate. And I'll start with 4 because a lot of the last few months have been focused about strengthening the way we operate, our processes, and how we try to deliver on all the other things. That how we operate as an organisation will determine how successful we are in delivering all the other things that we need to do. As you're all probably aware, there's been some difficulties, over the last few months, not least sorting out the financial situation. What I'm looking to do though is, this is certainly not, it's not a situation where we're looking at things that's wrong and trying to find somebody to blame. We're looking back at some of the things that need fixing and looking forward and how we go forward when we do. Because that's the only way that you can operate positively and effectively going forward. In terms of the roles made, some of the decisions that have been taken is to get better control and better understanding of exactly what we need to do to smarten up our operation. And I think we've changed the management team around to a degree to deliver on a new phase in where this council is going. And we'll continue to look at strengthening the way we operate and maximise the opportunities for growth. Ambition 1, town centre regeneration, that goes beyond just tidying up the high streets and trying to attract a few more retailers. Town centre regeneration is about attracting more people into Copeland by making it a better place for people to come and live and work. Clearly there's issues in the dilapidated state of a number of our towns, and we will have a real focus on the town centres of Whitehaven, Cleatamua, Egremont and Millam, and hopefully we get a spring off from there. Part of the work in conjunction of pulling the strategy together has already commenced. The pursuit of the dilapidated building owners, the grot spots, and we're making real progress on that. What we're also trying to do as well is by having a clear plan like this and a clear strategy and vision is to engage our partners, our strategic partners, to work with us because they can see where we're going. And I'll talk a little bit more about that and how that will help us with the socio-economic plan, because we've run this through, all the key partners who we work with as an organisation. In terms of town centre regeneration, part of that will be for us to be looking to build houses on an unprecedented level. To attract people to come and make some of these, we hear a lot about temporary workers. These are long-term contracts, and we want them to become permanent residents, not temporary residents. An increase in population can be only beneficial to all parts of our borough, but we've got to make sure we're putting in place the things that they need. And not a lot of that's working in conjunction, with the MP strategy, with our own strategy, and we've got to really make the area sing and dance for to bring professional people to come and make permanent residency and broaden and diversify the economy. So we'll be looking at, to bring house building on a different level, and there's been some real positive things. Yesterday, the announcement of the planning permission of the Lake District National Park, of the Wellbank project. That started off with trying to get more people in boots and to keep the school open. And now we've got, you know, a hotel going up there, so it'll attract business people in, it'll attract people to live in the area, and it just dispels the myths that you can't get planning through the Lake District National Park. And we'll try to get them working in conjunction with our own planners to deliver better outcomes there, so we can get these big plans to do. In terms of ambition too in commercialisation, commercialisation is not privatisation. I've got to make that clear. Privatisation is taking something that's publicly owned and putting it into private ownership. The commercialisation of this council is about keeping things publicly owned and enhancing what we do own to deliver income generation that will feed back into services. Commercialisation, the easiest way of explaining it, is about making money. And what we'll do in strengthening the way we operate is look at and examine every single department in this organisation and see if there's a room where we can make money from it. And there's already some examples where we're working with partners, where we're looking at commercial ideas that are starting to spring forward. Some of the ones that we've looked at, where initially we looked where they could potentially make us what we thought were significant profits, have delivered other benefits. We're putting together, as we speak at the moment, the Cumbrian ladder, or the Copeland ladder. We're just finalising the name on that. And that's working in conjunction with Sellafield to provide all the food that goes into that site. You know, milk, butter, and all the other food. It's a contract that runs into millions of pounds. Now, initially, you know, we brought a lot of the local rural economy together so all the produce is Cumbrian sourced, which helps our rural economy, it helps local businesses, it keeps people employed, and it helps them expand their businesses. You know, with further delving in, there isn't huge profit in this for the council, and Mighty is the main contract holder. It's now looking better working with them, but changing the source of where they bring the ingredients or the food in from. So, you know, Mighty's got all the infrastructure around that, and if we can move to a situation where all the food is being sourced locally, and you know, we've incorporated food firms like Caterite and a whole number of others from right across the borough, and you know, the benefit that we're getting is it's keeping people employed, it's creating employment opportunities, and it's keeping wealth within our communities and strengthening that. All sorts of other areas people look at. You know, that's a contract with Sellafield that's almost like a test case. If we can get that pulled together and all the I's dotted and the T's crossed and make a success of that, it opens up all sorts of opportunities. You know, in terms of our parks team, you know, within the boundaries of Sellafield and property owned, there's a lot of grass and there's a lot of plants and things like that need cutting that can all go out to tender. And if we can get those sort of tender contracts for John Davis and his team, it starts making a significant difference to the bottom line for council workers in terms of keeping our guys in jobs and expanding the employment opportunities in a growing organisation. And they're just two examples of a number of things that we're looking for in commercialisation. You know, the list is endless, and you know, everyone's open to contribute those ideas, and we'll explore and we'll look at them. And we've had a number of real positive ideas being forwarded by members of our own staff who are coming to me with ideas of how they can make their departments profitable, so they can carry out the statutory duties, they can carry out additional duties that could create income, and we can start reversing the trend and becoming a growing organisation rather than shrinking. And it's another string to the ball of trying to address the issue of underfunding, balancing the budgets and continuing to provide quality services. So commercialisation is about making money. And even in town centre regeneration, they're linked together because there's money-making opportunities there. You know, for every new house that gets built in Copeland, the council gets a new house bonus that's been quite significant. So the more houses that we can get built, the more new house bonus, and it's another income stream. You know, commercialisation is not a one-trick pony strategy. You know, we've got to look at every single area of where we can deliver value. And you know, this is why when you take a strategy-led rather than a budget-led, and when you get a vision of where you're trying to go, you can start putting the plans in place that can take you there. You know, in terms of ambition 3, employment skills and social well-being. You know, I'm going to put a, you know, we speak extensively to partners around socio-economic plans, and you know, I've heard in my 9 months in this chamber, you know, various conversations around socio-economics and what we're trying to focus to it. You know, when you go to the meetings with the other councillors and we talk about Copeland and Summerfield and they start flying the parochial flag and things like that, I came across some figures that people of an employable age, working age population, the highest percentage of people on benefits in Cumbria is in Copeland. And with the nuclear industry sat right in the middle of Copeland, that is not the way it should be, and that isn't me being parochial. When I go down to them to see you've got to address what's on your own doorstep before we start springing out into Allerdale and to Barra and all those places, but it's about bringing a real focus to it. It's a, you know, with socio-economics, in fairness, the Summerfield, the supply chain, they've all funded different projects, and they've been a little bit haphazard with a little bit here and a little bit there and a little gift here. You know, what we're putting before them is a strategic plan, a clear vision, and they know the outcome of the money that they're putting in, where we've got clear measurables, and then we can hold their feet to the fire a little bit more. And in fairness, you know, we sat with the senior manager from the NDA, the CEO of Summerfield on Friday just gone, and they just get that. You know, they went away with the socio-economic plan and it's been redrafted up because they're going to link what they're doing to what we're doing, because they're going to run in parallel, and that's how it should work. And with the supply chain, you know, they've all got a commitment to socio-economics, and you know, some of these multinationals can fulfil that commitment for things that they do around the world, not just in Copeland. And you know, what we've got to do is sort of pin them down with clear measurables and deliverables that they can all buy in. And by us developing a social policy as one of the aspects of our strategy, then we can go to them and buy in and get some joined up approach from the various members of the supply chain. I've also been out to Gen 2 and to the Lakes College, and you know, first of all, you know, don't let everyone just keep talking the area down, because there's a lot of good news out there. You know, in terms of per head of population, there's more apprentices get trained in West Cumbria than anywhere else in the United Kingdom. If you take Cumbria as a whole, the only place training more apprentices than Cumbria is Derby. But when you synchronise that down, the vast bulk of the apprentices getting trained in Cumbria are getting trained in West Cumbria. Gen 2 at the moment is full to capacity, and they've got huge expansion plans. But you know, some of the issues that we've got, you know, it starts relating back to some of the supply chain not committing to apprentices because they've got a 2-year contract or they've got an 18-month contract. Well, there's 60-odd supply chain companies at least, and if we get them together, then what they should be doing is a joint approach where they're sponsoring jointly a fixed number of apprentices through a 4-year programme. And if that's 1 year with a Reaver and 1 year with AMEC and you know, 1 year with another member, it creates a real joined up approach, and I think we can almost double the number of apprentice and training opportunities. But what we're giving them is a plan that they can work to. You know, we're not just going to them and saying, you know, take more apprentices, and well, we're only here for 2 years, we can't. You know, we've taken that into account. I was down at the Millen Network Centre last week at one of the business consultations, and they've got a lot of units that they're developing, and you know, a real issue for somebody in Millen who's on Gen 2 is travelling all the way to Lily Hall every day. We'll probably take all the wages of it. So, you know, travelling from Millen to Lily Hall 5 days a week. And we're going to go back to Gen 2 with a proposal of expanding and looking at some of those units and supporting and training some of the people in the south of the borough down there. You know, Gen 2 is in Allerdale, and that's just the way it is, but it provides a service to us. And if we can stick something, you know, when they're looking at expanding and growing and getting the supply chain to building that, it's a feasible plan that can be worked to and start addressing some of the real skills issue. So, you know, we're building on a good platform from there. I think a really sort of strong platform. You know, we are currently the best in the country for trained apprentices. Could we do better? Yes, we can. How can we do better? I think we've given them a good plan for exactly how we can. And, you know, it fits in the same with the third sector. You know, I keep saying it, and I make no apology, that the biggest thing that's hit me since coming into this role is the levels of deprivation and the way some families struggle around Copeland. I was nowhere near aware of the extent of it. We're now pulling together a social inclusion policy that will take to the supply chain for the same kind of joined up approach to support that right throughout the borough. We're bringing the third sector together in meetings because there's probably economies of scale in terms of building and some that they're using and how it could be used, and we'll work with them. And you know, there's an opportunity as well when we get such a coherent, clear vision for councillors, backbench councillors, to think, well, I can get involved in that, I can contribute to that, and know where I can make a difference because we know what direction we're travelling in. So employment, skills, social well-being, all very high on the agenda. In terms of the employment, the other part, you know, of the supply chain thing is to continue to press our rights in making sure that they use the local supply chain where possible. And I'm working with my business group in terms of developing those companies where they don't exist. And we'll continue to look for every opportunity to press Copeland first, opportunities in terms of employment. Because we've got to broaden and diversify our economy. You know, nuclear is the rock on which we build the economy, but we've got to build lasting sustainability. You know, involved in employment, skills, social well-being is also tourism. You know, a conscious decision was taken some time ago not to focus on tourism. I think it's too big to ignore. You know, we've got the nuclear industry does not generate as much wealth in Cumbria as what the tourism industry does. It's 2 billion. Copeland's currently getting 8% of that. We could get an awful lot more, but we won't get an awful lot more if we don't have a focus and we don't have a plan and we don't work with people like the Lake District National Park to deliver that. And you know, 60% of our landmass in Copeland sits right in the Lake District National Park. So the 4 key pillars of this, of the strategy and the plan, as you see, it's town centre regeneration, it's commercialisation, it's employment, skills and social well-being, and strengthen the way we operate. Strengthening the way we operate is absolutely critical. We can't make this happen. All we can do is create the environment that allows it to happen, to facilitate for the people who can make it happen. Because you know, that's employers, that's third sector, and it's all the people that we work with. And what we as a council and as representatives of our borough have got to do is create that environment, facilitate, making it as easy as possible, and give a clear vision for our partners to buy into. Medium-term financial strategy. We've aligned the medium-term financial strategy to the new draft corporate strategy. And the 6 principles are revenue budget strategy, commercial and income generation, council tax policy, capital investment, treasury management and risk management. The key messages to come from the medium-term financial strategy is there will be a 1.95% increase in Copeland Borough Council's element of council tax. I had a clear manifesto pledge that I would look to reduce taxes through commercialisation. At the moment, because of the situation we're in, we're clearly not in a position where we can reduce taxes, but we've got to have that clear as a focus, and that's where we've got to try and get to. So, but we've got to get the horse in front of the cart. You know, we've got to get things in place that will allow us the room and the leverage to be able to do that. But we've got to have a clear focus on that is what we're trying to deliver for the residents of the borough. I want to endeavour to minimise staff redundancies. You know what I'll say. Before the question comes, can I guarantee there'll be no redundancies? Absolutely not. I couldn't guarantee that now. I couldn't guarantee if we had 200 million to spare, because businesses evolve. Some jobs become obsolete, and even if we were going from 200 staff to 300 staff, there would still be the potential of redundancies. So in any organisation, whether it's growing or shrinking, you could never ever turn around and say categorically there will be no redundancies. But what we will endeavour to do is minimise redundancies. What we're also, by having a clear strategy-led budget rather than a strategy-led plan rather than a budget-led plan. You know, if you're having a budget and you go from 15 million to 12 million and you're just going to approach it on slash and burn cuts, what that does is create uncertainty all over the place. Because the reality in this organisation is where in the period of time when it's gone from 500 to 250, there's been very, very few redundancies. But what you get is when the mantra's cuts, and it's all budget-led, is you create uncertainty all over the organisation, and people start leaving before before their time comes. And the wrong people have left, whose time wouldn't have come. And they've left, and it's left us in a situation where the hole that they've left has created issues that we're having to sort out further down the line, and there's been no real saving in it. So you know, what you've got to have is a clear plan and people understanding exactly where you're going. You know, there's also, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there at night. You know, what we want to take into the business community is that we clearly know where we're going, and we've clearly got a plan how we can get there, and people can buy into that. We want to endeavour to maximise opportunities from the business rates retention scheme. You know, I won't let it pass without comment. You'll have seen the social media about business rates retention. You know, all our Christmases are coming at once. If you believe everything you read on social media, there is nothing official being produced. We've got people down there in London who's lobbying. You know, I've got letters in there. There is no official line, and the policy on that is still vague, and there's no detail. And you know, it would be foolhardy for us to start putting a plan together on the riches over the hill that might never come. And if they do come down the line, then they're a bonus, and we'll deal with that at the time. But we will look to maximise the opportunities from the business rates retention scheme. The appeal for the Southfield rates is now very close to being settled. There's been an offer made, and that should be sorted out relatively quickly, and I'll update you all on exactly the outcome of that as soon as the figures are nailed down and everything is agreed. But that, you know, that's been a hamstring in this council for a long, long time, and just to have it out of the way and know where we are and have a clear path forward will help us greatly. You know, we aim to review the debt recovery procedures and just minimise write-offs. You know, we'll take this to the very, you know, limit of what we can do to make sure that we're collecting every single penny that we can do. And we'll aim to be a financially self-sufficient council by 2021 through an active commercial agenda. Not the only agenda. You know, we're still going to have our council tax, we're still going to have our business rates retention, we're going to add to that the commercial income that we generate. We're going to focus on the town centre regeneration and the new house bonus, and what we'll do is we'll look at every opportunity to bring revenue into this organisation so we become less dependent on rate support grants going forward. We will establish a trading company. That will come to an executive on the 11th of March for approval, and will be established following that meeting subject to approval from the executive. We will also consider prudential borrowing to support capital investment for schemes that will deliver revenue, efficiencies and income. You know, I'm fully aware there's been a reluctance of the council to get involved in borrowing, probably related to previous loans. The loan from 2002, which you're probably aware we're paying £350,000 back on, up to 2042, but prudential borrowing, we can get the very, very best rates in the market, and it's sometimes wise to do something we might not need to use, but it's worth keeping the option open, and it's the way that effective businesses do operate. So we're aware there's the opportunity to do that, or the necessity, we will do that. In terms of the revenue budget proposal 2017, we will bump around to implement the commercial strategy, including an enhanced marketing budget to promote our services, technical advice to ensure we set up our trading company and other delivery vehicles correctly, reviewing our income generation strategy, smarter procurement and contract management capacity, and we're looking to invest 300,000 over 2 years. Efficiencies and income generation from the service unit reviews in the parks and open spaces fleet, environment and health, waste and modesty support services need that additional marketing budget to deliver the service that we've got. And we'll have a review of support services across the council where we're anticipating saving £500,000. An additional income from smart investment, where we think there will get 100,000 in additional income from through Treasury Management, and that's been endorsed by auditing government. The capital programme. In terms of capital investment, we're going to have a £1 million seed fund investment in town centre regeneration over the next 4 years, and that will attract further external partner investment and act as a match fund with any external grants that may be available. 1 million to secure the right land and assets to deliver wider regeneration across the borough over the next 4 years. The key milestones. The 19th of January was when the Executive considered the initial proposals. This is the first budget delivered by a rainbow organisation, and this has been delivered by myself as an independent, the Labour and Conservative members, and everyone in this council has been represented, and more importantly, everybody who votes in this community has been represented. The 26th of January presented to overview and scrutiny, and again, very productive meeting, a number of points raised, and the report back from overview and scrutiny will go to the Executive on the 11th. Clearly today on the 4th of February was when the report was presented to the Council, and from the 11th to the 24th, mayoral amendment letters to all elected members, setting out the results of any outstanding information that's not currently in the papers that you've been provided with. And the meeting on the 25th of February is for the Council to approve the Council tax requirement of 2016-17. The draft commercial framework is that we develop and implement a commercial strategy. We'll develop income generation strategy for fees and charges to the public, businesses and other organisations. We'll develop a procurement strategy and a contract management framework. We'll explore every opportunity to trade where financially viable. We'll improve service cost recovery methods, internal charging, etc. Business case development for trading company and the energy company. We'll develop a commercial culture within the organisation. You know, it's a key pledge of mine is to look at running this organisation like a modern 21st century business to deliver better outcomes and services to the communities that we represent. We'll explore alternative delivery models to ensure the best fit for Copeland, and will balance both risk and reward to the Council. And we'll aim to be financially self-sufficient by 2021. The Autumn Statement Spending Review 2015, published November 25th, 2015, there's been a reduction nationally in funding of 6.1 billion in local government departments over the next 4 years. This represents a reduction of being between 23.9% and 27.5%. Funding reform, 100% business rates retention by the end of Parliament, but with additional responsibilities, and fiscally neutral, nationally or locally. A lot of this will be tied up in the devolution, revolution, as they're calling it. I'm in London on Monday with Michael Heseltine, Baroness Williams, and a group from across Cumbria in the next stage of the devolution proposals. You know, again, I will keep Council completely updated how that progresses. but I can assure everyone in this room and everyone in this borough that I'll be pressing for a deal, and the only deal that will be acceptable is one that is beneficial to Copeland and everyone who lives in it. There's a rebalancing the local government finance system linked to social care authorities may change the local shared business rates between county and district councils. Directly elected mayors are able to increase local business rates for specific infrastructure projects, and there's also now the ability to spend 100% fixed asset receipts on review costs of reform projects. The provisional local government finance settlement announced on 17th December split funding between tiers of government has changed, causing higher reductions for district councils. Council tax capped at 2% year on year and 4% for social care authorities, and the rural service delivery grant increased from 1,000 to 1,500 for programme. The details of that Fiona will pick these up and take through at the end of the year. The new homes bonus, which is really important to us and got to be a real focus and is a key part of our strategy, to increase to 649k for Copeland 2016-17. The new home bonus will now continue indefinitely. Proposals to change the new house bonus scheme from 2017-18 and reduce the scheme from 6 years to 4 years, and reform the grant awarded to reflect local authorities' performance on housing growth. Flexible use of capital receipts. Use non-housing capital receipts for reform projects to deliver efficiencies. It applies to upfront costs that will generate future ongoing savings and or transform service delivery to reduce costs or improve the quality of service delivery in future years. The ongoing revenue costs of new processes arrangements cannot be classified as qualifying expenditure. An annual efficiency strategy approved by council each year. A 4-year fixed funding offer. Government offering a 4-year funding settlement 2019-20. It must have an efficiency plan in place. The offer is qualified, states figures may still be subject to change. No formal request process in place yet. That really concludes my presentation. If you want to add a few comments, but what we're putting before the council is, in my view, a progressive, forward-thinking budget and a change of emphasis to where that we've operated. You know, in a changing world, you've got to keep on changing. We're all aware of the budgetary and financial pressures facing all local authorities. But as I said when I came in April, you know, I'm optimistic for the future of Copeland and what can be delivered. With so much investment coming into the area, we needed a clear plan and a clear strategy of how we can optimise that. And working with strategic partners who's looked at the plan, they've gone away and they're buying into what we're trying to do as it runs in parallel with what they're trying to do. You know,
very good.
Thank you. It's also on the slides. Can we just go back to the top? Can everyone hear me all right? Is that okay? Ultimately, the government have again they've put a lot of flexibilities into the settlements that they've announced this time in the spending review. That's a really, really good thing for us. However, what the big thing we have to watch is they're trying to rebalance the funding in two-tier authorities between county and district, and the figures are quite clear that the districts come worse off. Okay? So that's fact. And we need to lobby hard to make sure that what we get with the business rates retention isn't taken away and rebalancing the other funding. So we have to make sure those freedoms and flexibilities are balanced for us. So that's the only caution I will put on that. We do see a 24 to 27% reduction over the 4 years. If you look at it without inflation in it, turns out to be about 31%. So there is still a significant reduction to local government funding overall over those 4 years, but it's as was planned. So there are no surprises in terms of we knew the downward trend of that money coming through, and we forecast that. So the revenue support grant in 2019-20, for example, goes down to £39,000. That used to be the major form of funding based on deprivation and other indices and authorities, and that's where we lose out. And that's the bit we're trying to replace with the commercial agenda to make sure that we aren't reliant on that, because it just simply won't be there. That's the bit we're trying to do. In terms of this chart, the government have focused this time on social care, and that's quite right, but what it means is that the counties have the ability to increase by up to 4%. We are stuck with being able to go up to 2%, but there's a policy decision around increasing or not increasing the council tax. The Mayor's explained the policy position of the Executive. We forecast 1.95% for the next 4 years, but I've been told that that is a planning figure, that we're looking to try and bring that down. So that's just about the figures. Core spending power has been shifted so that social care, the Better Care Fund, which doesn't affect us directly but affects our residents, is shown separately out of the calculation. Equally, the government want to show the shift to council tax funding and business rates funding as the main sources of income that we have, bar fees and charges. So they're trying to show that a lot more money is going into social care locally than not. So what it does to the county, it impacts us because they are restricted on what they can do with that 2% increase. So none of that can help us directly on our budget, but it does help our residents. So we have to keep an eye to the county's budget, and we feed into that as well. In terms of the business rates, they will allow directly elected mayors to increase the rate for businesses as long as on the local enterprise partnership, the LEP, the business partners agree to that. What they've said is it doesn't matter, the vote will not be with the local authorities on that LEP, it will be for the businesses who represent on that local enterprise partnership to vote for or against. And that's for big infrastructure projects. Again, that's great. A lot of the large infrastructure projects are highways, so we'd have to liaise with the county around that. So there are some positives there. In terms of, I'll just quickly go back on the flexibility of receipts, if that's all right. There's somewhere set from the end, I think. Yeah, there. There's use of capital receipts. If we are to take advantage of that, we have to put before council an efficiency strategy before the 1st of April. So we're driving Lindsay mad with asking for extra council meetings around things. It is likely that we will submit an efficiency strategy based on our delivering differently programme, because if we can maximise land sale receipts and use it in this way, we will take that opportunity. But we have to sell the land in the year that we're going to use it. That's quite difficult to do, but it is something that we can look at. I've put into there about the upfront cost, because a lot of members have asked me, can it be used to cover the ongoing revenue costs of anything that we do? And the government have clarified no, it can't, because every member must have asked the same questions. So I'll not repeat over what the Mayor said. The 4-year fixed funding offer is a great thing, but the government have caveated that to say we reserve the right to change the figures that are fixed if there's anything goes wrong with the economy nationally. So they're not really fixed. And there's no guidance about how we apply for that. But if it's a good deal for us and it gives us some stability, we'll recommend to yourselves that we go for that. But we've got no guidance around that at the moment. So there's probably not much more to add that the Mayor's covered, but happy to take questions when we get into that session.
I'm just going to put the table back on the stage and then we'll take questions.
We'll continue with the meeting now. Can I thank you for bearing with us. We will now consider the report. Council has been advised that the purpose of today's meeting is to allow us the chance to hear the draft budget proposal. ask questions and seek clarification. We will not be asked to approve the proposal at today's meeting, merely to note the current position. The full proposal will be brought to the meeting on the 25th of February. With that in mind, Mayor, would you like to present the report to Council, please? But can we go to questions? Now, can I remind members that when one's speaking, you can be interrupted, and also be upstanding when you ask questions of speaking. Thank you. Councillor Holliday.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got two questions. Do you want to ask them both together, or do you want to take them separately? Yeah, because one's on housing and one's on the third sector. So let's start with the housing one. Obviously, Copeland Borough Council is still the strategic housing authority. And I'm just wondering whether we'll be using the strategic housing board to identify the houses that we need and which partners we're going to be using. Because I think it's essential that we look at the partners as well on whether we need affordable housing, rented accommodation, executive housing, the mixture, what sort of percentages we're going to need. Not everybody coming into the area are going to look for executive type housing. We will be looking at contractors look for short-term rented accommodation as well as people look for affordable housing. So will we be using established housing groups, or will we be looking to establish new housing groups?
Thank you, Alan. In terms of the type of properties we need, I've got real ambitions to see significant population growth in Copeland, in all socio-economic classes. So what we need in Copeland is houses of all types. We need affordable housing, we need mid-range housing, and we need executive housing. We're, part of the Open for Business conference was about getting as many planners or developers at that conference as possible to open their eyes to the opportunity that's beginning to present itself in this part of the world. We had a film running at the start, none of us in here need reminding the fantastic environment that we all live in, but I think the environment that we live in certainly needs reminded to people on a broader scale. We are working with a number of developers. We're working with the Lake District National Park for one, where we're exploring every opportunity that we can, because what we want to see is in the towns, the villages, and also with Newgen as well and their housing policy, which could support what we're trying to do. But what underpins it to me is that there's a lot of people coming into the area, and we want to create an environment where they'll look to make permanent rather than temporary the residents, and they can become locals.
Just to supplement it, so what will we be using, as I say, we've been the Strategic Housing Authority, how are we going to establish the Strategic Housing Board to look at that and to work with the council and with other organisations?
The Strategic Housing Panel has been reinstated. So is that what you're looking for?
Definitely,
yeah.
Because I think it's essential part of the council that we have a group that looks solely at that.
I'm not sufficient, I'll come back. In terms of what we're trying to do, we'll keep council fully updated along the way. It's what I did sort of mention when I was in there, part of the sort of town centre regeneration, we've already done a large piece of work trying to identify potential office space that's required in Copeland, and that's working with the supply chain. And there's about 59 companies on the first 11 that we've worked with. We've identified about 300,000 square feet of office space that's required, and all that will build into the plan, because that puts footfalls into towns right across the borough where we can find and develop these opportunities. It puts footfall in, it puts big spending power in, and again it aligns to a whole revitalisation of hotel centres. But yeah, you answer your question, I will bring the strategic housing plan on.
Can I just answer that as well, Alan?
Yeah.
As you know,
we have argued to have the strategic housing panel back, and it is coming back. And we're in the throes now of writing a strategic housing plan, which will go through the strategic housing panel.
Thanks very much.
Councillor Connolly.
There's a sentence in the corporate strategy early on that says the challenges of complex local deprivation, child poverty, poor health, health inequalities, etc. Now all of us here know where they are. We know that they're in social housing areas. In nowhere here can I see that this council is going to work closely with the social housing provider. We as councillors, everyone here that's got social housing in their area, the knock on the door is always about housing and housing repairs, and 90% of it is. So I would say I would like this council to have a very high profile working with the social housing providers so that we as councillors have a voice to them, because at present it's a voice crying in the wilderness. Thank you.
Peter, we've got to totally agree with you there, and especially what's happened recently with the reorganisation of one of our providers, which was Home Group. Part of this plan, that will be part of the plan, how and when we're going to work with them. And totally agree, we have to work very closely with them, and that will be one of the issues that will come to the housing panel.
Councillor Hitchin.
Thank you, Chairman. I have two questions. Can I put them one after the other, or would you like
one now and one later.
Okay. My first one is on new homes bonus. 600,000, I think it's around about that figure, for actually developing new houses. The largest development within the national park has occurred today, yesterday, seemed years ago that we started it though, in Bootle. I assume, maybe wrongly, that there will be a reward for hard work, and that reward will come in the form of some of the new house bonus into that parish. Because we have to encourage our local communities to look for available land, to find, as they've done in Bootle, financiers who are prepared to come in, put their money where their mouth is, and then back a local group of residents in developing a site that was an eyesore left by the MOD. I make that point because there's another one, hopefully going to happen relatively shortly, in Gosforth. Now, it's interesting that those two areas of Copeland are within the National Park and are identified by the National Park as service centres. So within Copeland, when I look at the budget that's being presented to us, I've already told the Mayor I think it's very Whitehaven and town-centric. And therefore, what I'm saying is, we need to look at that budget very, very carefully, that it not only supports our four major towns, who, as we've said before, apart from Whitehaven, are within a rural community, if you take the government's definition of it. The rest of us, 60-odd%, are within the sparse rural communities. And a lot of people forget that. Now, we have an opportunity here in Copeland, as the National Park have shown us yesterday, that you can work on individual localities where the needs have been identified, where you can do things differently. You and I have argued now, well, I've done it for 40 years, and I know it's not far short of that.
I'm much younger than you, don't
You smooth talker. For the Lake District National Park to look at the park and its planning policies, not on a blanket policy, but on areas which have now become the distinctive areas within the national park. And we are within the western distinctive area. Yesterday made my heart glow because it was a change that we've been arguing for years. And I hope that within this budget we will recognise that we have two other areas within Copeland that need the same sort of thinking applied to it as we are doing within our major towns. And I hope that will happen. I leave it with you, Mayor. I'll be looking at the fine detail of the budget when we finally get it, because we've just got the broad strokes at the moment. But when we get all the charts with all the figures and what's going where, I'll be much happier. So those are the two things, the homes bonus and the regeneration. Could I just clarify before I sit down that the county can apply up to 2% on its council tax. The other 2% is for health and social care. It's not a total 4%. The 2% for social care is very much ring-fenced. And we have to be aware of that because we have to make sure that we've got that as a gift, really, and saying, county, look at what we've got. We've got some terrible situations, health and social care problems within the borough. We've got to look at how we address that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I will certainly be looking at what the county do, Keith, and how to support Copeland, I can assure you. You know, in response to your question about the town centre regeneration, I'm from Egmont, I live in St Bees, I work in Whitehaven, I'm the mayor of Copeland, the whole of Copeland, and I've spent time down out the Wellbank project. I've been with Trudy Harrison and her team, because I think what's been achieved down there at Bootle is a shining example of what can be delivered all across Copeland and in different parts of Copeland. It's an example of what can be done if you have a vision, if you have a plan, and if you have determination to push them both through. So, you know, I'll put on record here today, you know, thanks to the people who led that project up in Bootle, because like you, I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's great news for Copeland. It's great news for the local economy, and it's a bit of a standard bearer that we can look at when we're trying to do similar developments all over the rest of this borough.
Councillor Holiday. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was interested to hear what you said about working with the third sector on preservation and the like. Can I ask, will we be working with existing groups that's been trying to address deprivation in some of our areas, or will we be looking to reinvent the wheel and start with new groups to try and address it? And I say that because we, certainly in South Whitehaven, we took over from the old neighbourhood management team to continue the good work that was settled through central government, because they funded it initially, and we have some money left over so that we could monitor and continue the progress within the deprivation area. So will we be working with groups of that nature, or are we looking to establish new groups to address the deprivation in the areas across Copeland?
We'll be looking to work with the existing groups. I think the existing groups in the third sector in Copeland are accredited to the third sector nationwide. I think we've got some fantastic people in all the organisations around Copeland working in the third sector, doing an incredible job in very, very difficult circumstances. In terms of what's required in the third sector, they're the experts, not me. What I see our position as a councillor is facilitating, making things a little bit better and a little bit more focused on them, and engaging supply chain companies into supporting them. I know, one of the issues that one of them have already raised with me is the funding's been reduced in some cases as money's been diverted off to the floods. I'm very sympathetic to everyone who's been flooded. It's a horrible situation to be in, but there's been separate appeals run for that. I don't think we should divert money away from one stricken situation to solve another. But the idea is that we work with the third sector. That the third sector, who have already sort of commended, is that we bring them together and see how we can even work with each other, where there's economies of scale, and a real facilitate that position for them. You know, again, in terms of the supply chain, we will be looking at a joint approach, but at every opportunity, as a council, we're looking to support that. At one of the public meetings at Cleaton at the Celtic Club it was, I was visited by a number of farmers from Ennerdale who drew my attention to issues that I had absolutely no idea about in terms of what was going on with the water, you know, which has led to public meetings with United Utilities, but more importantly, the fact that I didn't know I had to go and get an understanding of it. So I've been out to Thirlmere, I met with United Utilities, I've got a better understanding of what they're doing, and while we were there, they chipped 50 grand into it to kickstart our social inclusion, social third sector policy. So, you know, to kind of set the standard already that we'll look at some of the other partners in the area to follow. Councillor Pollen.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to the Mayor and Fiona for that presentation. I've had it a couple of times now, and a lot of information there, and I think you've answered a lot of questions and concerns during that presentation. I've still got concerns, and I'm sure lots of them came well regarding commercialisation. But the question's really got 3 points, and I know there's no guarantees going forward. We're talking about 4-year strategy. We're on what they're hearing now, really. So the 3 points are, I'd like the Mayor to confirm that there are no cuts to frontline services this year, that there are no enforced redundancies this year. I'd also like the Mayor to look at again his campaign pledges, because he did talk about reducing taxes. And when we've got a situation where one of our main strategies going to commercialisation is going to cost £300,000, it's a lot of money. There's a lot of people in Copeland that have been paying money out and getting less services. I would like you to look again at the 1.9 increase, and I would like you to consider not raising council tax.
I would love to look at that, Sam, and not raise it, but we're in a position where, you know, it sort of simply isn't financially viable at the moment. In terms of frontline services, I can confirm there will be no cut to frontline services. In terms of enforced redundancies, I could never make any commitment by that for reasons already explained. What I can commit to is trying to make sure that we minimise redundancies. But, you know, in some departments, if the service review throws up the jobs are obsolete and no longer exist and no longer valued for money, it could possibly lead to enforced redundancies. That is unavoidable. In terms of the money that's been invested in the commercial strategy, that's because long term we're trying to find a solution to alleviate the problem permanently. Otherwise we'll always be reducing services, we'll always be making redundancies, and we'll never be able to reduce the tax because, you know, you've got to replace the income that's lost from somewhere. Commitment to a manifesto pledge of reducing taxes, the only way I can ever get to be able to deliver on that is to make the commercial agenda work. I would love to stand here and say, you know, the commercial agenda is brand new to councils, that I invented it. Sadly, I can't. You know, I would like to, you know, say that I wouldn't like to say, you know, you couldn't even put it down to being, you know, a Conservative policy, a Labour policy, or a Liberal policy, because, you know, Labour councils in Nottingham, Hammersmith, Birmingham, Leeds, Warrington, Gateshead, North Tyneside and Newcastle City are already running a commercial agenda. Conservative councils in Kent, Aylesbury, South Staffordshire, Guildford, Chelwell, Portsmouth, Woking, all running the commercial agenda, and Liberal councils in Eastleigh are running a commercial agenda. It's the future. It's the only way that we can deliver on our commitments to the public of Copeland. Yeah?
Yeah, just briefly, I wasn't criticising. What I was saying was I've got concerns about commercialisation this year. We all need to understand it, and I wasn't actually criticising the funding. Lots of questions to ask about it, but I mean, my last point of the question was about council tax. It was about one of your pledges, and at the end of the day, mate, you talked about maximising revenues. We've got reserves over £10 million, as you know. So we should be looking at true levels of borrowing you were talking about before, looking at our reserves. It's a thing you could look at, and we're supposed to bring up things tonight that, you know, the executive and yourself might be able to look at, and I think you should look at that seriously. You shouldn't be saying the next 4 years we're going to hike the council tax up to 1.9%. That's what I was saying.
Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. Mr Mayor and officers, I'd like to thank you for the document that you've placed before us today. I think it's a very comprehensive document, but keying in with what Councillor Pollen has said and what you've just said yourself, there are dangers to commercialisation, and it's very laudable that you want to go down this path. But what I would like from you tonight is an assurance that you and the officers, and I'm directing this comment to Fiona, will absolutely look at the minutiae with the Treasury and the LGA to make sure, and using the word here, the trading strategy, that we don't fall foul of any of the Local Government Goods and Services Act, because it's a minefield. And I have 27 years experience of this sort of attitude in local government. You've got to be absolutely careful that you don't tread on anybody's toes who, in the business sector, by breaking the rules of the 151 Goods and Services Act. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mayor.
And part of the commercial strategy and the initial investment is the legal structures and all that thing to make sure that we are right. You know, in terms of due diligence, it will be absolute due diligence. You know, we're engaging with people with experience in what we're trying to do, and with every sort of commercial option that we're looking at, there's different levels of risk reward. The greater risk, the greater the reward, and we've got to take a decision as a council when we balance those together, which we go forward with. But the commercial strategy, you know, is the future. You know, it's been adopted around the country, and it's what can deliver for the people of Copeland better services in the long term. Councillor Bradshaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could just ask, picking up on, I'm sorry which one it was, the third sector. Coincidentally, it purely is coincidental, I emailed Pat Green today because we have had up to, I don't think it's met this year, and this is what I was asking about, a quarterly meeting with the voluntary sector. I don't know who else was on it, but I'm just wondering if that's going to be resurrected. I haven't had an answer from the email yet, but I don't know.
Absolutely, yes. I thought I'd already sent an email. There is one going out because I'm trying to get a meeting together of all the third sector. In terms of the regularity, when we get to the meeting, that'll be up to them to decide, but you know what I'll be committing to do is being at as many of those meetings personally as possible. The work they do is absolutely on the top of my agenda. The deprivation issues that we have here in Copeland, I have determined that we make a big haul in rectifying them over the term of this 4 years. Councillor Luthwaite.
Thank you. I'm asking you, I'm going on a different tack. I want to know more about the LEP. It seems an ethereal organisation to me. I want to know its composition and its powers, because it says it can adjust the business rates, is that right? The mayor can put a proposal to the LEP. So who on the LEP is from Copeland?
Right, this is what there's been kind of pressing issues in Copeland over the last few months, but I am now a member of the board of the British Energy Course and a member of the Local Enterprise Partnership Board, which is the LEP. So I am a board member of the LEP, and I represent on the LEP Copeland and Allerdale. It rotates every 2 years. So for the first 2 years of office it will be me, and for the next 2 years it will be the leader of Allerdale Council. Barrow and South Lakes operate the same way, Carlisle and Eden operate the same way. There is also private sector members on the LEP. Of 39 LEPs in the country, it's 39th best. It's the government vehicle for delivery of funding, and they've got a key role to play in infrastructure projects. I'm keen to see the LEP completely overhauled and reformed. My opinion, probably shouldn't say it, but I will anyway, my opinion is the LEP is it's like going to an extended version of a county council meeting. We've got to get more private sector into there. It's got to start getting more projects delivered, and the whole structure, which is now coming under review. And there's a working group being pulled together that we're going to lead from here to make sure the LEP's fit for purpose to deliver what it needs across this county, because the infrastructure issues are major issues with what's on the horizon with the investment. And I've got me foot to the pedal to make sure that, with any kind of devolution deal, the LEP will play a key role. And I guess up to now, the devolution process has been left-led, and that's wrong. Pretty much the same with the Britain's Energy Coast. We've got a review commission on Britain's Energy Coast. It's under review for what it delivers, how it delivers it, how it's going to deliver it, and we're playing a key role in that as well.
Can I ask?
I would like to now take a 5-minute break for people who wish to use the toilet, etc. Michael McVeigh.
Thank you, Chairman. Over the years, there's been a lot said about affordable housing, and this is probably the ideal time that affordable housing was given to those who provide it, which are the registered social landlords. No one else provides it, because it's what's affordable one man is what's affordable to the other. So should this council not be looking to any asset land transfer be given first opportunity to the registered social landlords? And I'm aware that there are restrictions on that you just can't give to an RSL. They should be given an opportunity to have some direct input into that they could possibly build to provide affordable accommodation. Okay.
Michael, your comments are noted. As I sort of said earlier, I'm up for housing of all types as to suit everybody. So to be taken into consideration, I'd ask Pat to sort of charge the planning department to contribute there.
Yes, Councillor, you're absolutely right that we do have that provision available to us, and of course, as Councillor Holliday indicated earlier, our Strategic Housing Authority, we have a commitment and obligation to make sure we provide that range and choice of housing. And over the years, the Council has used its assets to prime pump other forms of housing tenure, like the self-build plot up at Kells, which was quite innovative at the time. So that provision is indeed there. Also the provision of starter homes and homes for sale at the lower price end is also part of the devolution deal, and actually the government and the Homes and Communities Agency are looking across all of Cumbria to look at where there are public sector assets to prime pump the housing market for that particular sector. So yes, we can locally, although we have limited assets as you're aware, but it is also a priority nationally, and the devolution deal might well hold us to do some of that.
Councillor Barber.
Yeah, thank you. My question's with regard to revenue generation, and obviously there's a few of us supporters of it. I understand there was a proposal from a PDG recently to implement a small charge for disposal of garden waste. I also understand that the proposal for some reason has been rejected. And given the fact this is potentially a sustainable income and a significant income, even if there's only a small take-up, may I ask why, or will there be any sort of future proposal to revoke the current situation?
There was a proposal, came to executive, and it was sort of in the initial draft that we would put a charge on that came from the PDG. As part of the consultation process, there was significant feedback, in excess of 70%, asking us to reconsider that. So a decision was taken at executive to not put that in for this year and to reconsider that. Whether it will come back in the future is a possibility, but in response to consultation, we decided not to proceed with the initial plan.
Supplementary. Thanks for your answer there. Okay, there may have been, as I understand it, a 70% feedback against, asking anybody to pay for anything. You're always going to get a massive response with the answer no. But it also indicates that there's potentially a 30% willingness to take on this, and considering that revenue generation can sustain jobs, and 30% could be quite a significant fee. Might I ask you to sort of give it full consideration again?
These things will always remain under consideration, but the reality is, and again, some of the things that we're taking into account, we probably weren't ready with mechanisms in any case to maximise the opportunity. And I think also, I'm really keen that as a council we do get as much public engagement as we possibly can. And when there is responses, I think we've got to be seeing where we can to accommodate the public feeling. And that sort of certainly, we debated quite heatedly at the executive and the long term, and I was trying to swing a little bit by you've got to concede in some areas, you can't possibly in all, and that's in the most practicable one to concede and then respond to overwhelming feedback.
Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just asking on redundancies. I know the Mayor said he can't rule out redundancies. I can see that if somebody behaves illegally, or there's a suspicion of them behaving illegally, and, we can get rid of that person and say you're now redundant. But for the most part, I'm just talking...
No, you can't.
On the main thing of redundancies, can we just try and say, you can't say there'll be no redundancy, but can we say that be at the very minimum level of redundancies? Because we will make every single effort to retrain a person who is looking to be made redundant. Retrain.
Councillor, I think that's exactly what we did, sir. We're looking to minimise redundancies. People are acting illegally, will be dismissed and won't be made redundant.
Councillor John Bowman.
Thank you, Chairman. One of the things that isn't clear, or maybe isn't even mentioned in this strategy, or the strategies, is the lack of concurrent grant going forward to parish councils. Now, I don't think people realise how important and how hard working parish councils are. They do a lot of voluntary work, I would say 95 and 99% of them, and they also cut a lot of grass and do a lot of grounds work that the council, county council and other organisations have stopped doing. That concurrent grant goes towards that. And to expect parish councils just to put their precept in to cover work that others should be doing is, in my view, totally immoral. We are elected by the people out there, and to actually expect the people out there through the back door to actually pay an extra precept is wrong. And on the commercialisation point, open spaces Yes, get them to bid for jobs. I don't have a problem with that. But you've got to realise as well that some councils already use open spaces, and if their prices go up, they will actually lose jobs more than will gain them. Thank you.
In terms of open spaces, tendering for jobs, they'll be tendering on competitiveness. I don't anticipate the price going up at all. You know, I anticipate them being able to get more work and more revenue through the additional work they carry out, not by putting up prices. The open spaces team, Parks and Open Spaces team, and I should really have referred to this when John Davis was in earlier, have just received national recognition as the most efficient park and open spaces team in the whole of the UK for value for money. And it really was remiss of me not to pick that up when John Davis was sat in the public gallery today. So there's no intention of becoming uncompetitive, because in the commercial world it's about competitiveness. You know, if you're not competitive, you don't survive. You're squeezed out. And what we're looking to do is build the commercial operation and build it through efficient services. The point on the precept, the council, you know, again, Sam Pollen raised this with me at an economic town council meeting, and you know, I understand the point. You know, a lot of those grants have been going out to the parish councils. You know, in one case, because Whitehaven didn't have a parish council, and there were subsidies given to the other councils because there was money getting spent by Copeland and Whitehaven that they were benefiting from. And the initial proposal that I took to council, because you know, I took feedback from people who've been involved a long time, because it's been on the agenda to remove this for quite a while. And the initial thing that I took was that everybody would get it, including Whitehaven. And then when the facts were laid before me, it was when Whitehaven's precept was set last year. It was set quite generously, and that was taken into account. So it was something they've not had. It was built into the precept that the team put the Whitehaven precept together. Now there was talk last year of removing this grant, and it was deferred off, and it's come back again. And you know, I thought it only fair not to remove it immediately, but to give 12 months notice that it would be removed, because it then gives the town councils an opportunity, a 12-month window to deal with not getting that money. You know, unfortunately, it's an efficiency saving that's got to be made, and the best place to rectify it is in the town and parish councils themselves. And you know, I don't understate in any way the work that the town and parish councils do, and the people who serve on them. I think they do a fantastic job throughout the community of Copeland, and I've visited virtually every one now. You know, unfortunately, in a state time, we've got to make savings somewhere for us as a borough council.
Councillor Mattea.
I thought I just read there, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just a comment rather than a question, mine. I also am not a great fan of commercialisation, and as my colleague in the front here has mentioned out, I think it's Goods and Services Act 1980, and I know the county council flirted with it for a couple of years, and then they actually went in 1988, I think it was, they went fully commercialised on certain aspects of the work. And I'm pleased to say that now, after about 20 plus years, they've actually come back right now. The only one that's operating in the county now that I know of is the waste management side of it, which you might be able to make some money on there. Just a comment.
Like you said, the county council are approaching and doing commercial strategy.
Sorry?
Your point is that the county council don't have a commercial strategy?
No, they flirted with the commercialisation of the council in '88, and put it out there. There was a set trade company, if you said in any sort of style, right? One of those was Highways, one of them was blah blah blah. They brought in Capita, and they were doing client services. We've now gone full circle. What I'm saying is we've gone full circle, and after 20 years now, everything now is done back in house. You know, so there may be a lesson to be learned there. as opposed, apart from as I say, the waste side,
I
the
get
only waste
what
management.
you're talking about there, Sammy, is not commercialisation. You're talking about outsourcing. You know, that's like, you know, not using our bins and getting different or somebody like that to do it. You know, I'm committed to keeping services in-house and using the services in-house to explore every opportunity of where they can generate other revenue. You know, commercialisation, you know, we're not on about privatisation, we're not on about outsourcing.
It wasn't privatisation, Mike.
It's outsourcing.
No.
Councillor Bradshaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've lost the thread myself, but here we go. Can I ask Fiona, I'm sorry, a specific one on the papers? I'm a bit concerned on the budget that's come forward, and I did say this at OSC, but it's about the £850,000 that's not been put in, that's been agreed to be put in for the waste fleet. And on 15th of December, exec agreed that they would put money in, it would go to next full council for inclusion in 15-16 and 16-17 capital programme. I think there's some money left in the 15-16 capital programme. Is it around £300,000 for this fleet? We agreed to put in 850,000, and I know that's been taken out now, and that's one of the ways the budget's been balanced, except we've still got to find 177,000 for not charging for the bins. And I'm sure the Mayor will be able to balance the budget, find ways of doing that. But I'm a bit concerned that is that 850,000 plus the 300,000 a final figure, or is it likely to go up? And where's it coming from?
Thank you, Chair. When we went to overview and scrutiny, there was a... Sorry. When we went to overview and scrutiny, there was an issue. We were having a report done by an independent person from APSI, the Association of Public Sector Executives. That report just concluded that was looking to see if it was easier or more value for money for us to purchase those vehicles outright or to continue to lease the vehicles. At the current time, we lease the vehicles and we have a maintenance contract attached to that. We have an advantage that if one of the refuse collectors is off the road, there are one or two that we can call on. So there are other added value things to think about there. The draft report came through, we had a presentation on Monday or Tuesday, and that I think recommends that we go for a leasing arrangement, in which case the budget is as is in the revenue budget now. The older vehicles come out and the leasing costs for the new ones go in. So that should be pretty much a like for like. Is the 850 plus the 300 the final figure? I don't know, because we have to go to tender to see how much we can get those vehicles for, even when they're leased. So we have to see how much we can get those for from the lease company. The team have just left, otherwise they could have probably added something to that. But it is a replacement programme for more than 2 years. There are parks vehicles in there as well, so we'll have to get you the final figures. That's one of the things that will come through between the 11th and the 25th of February.
Thanks, Fiona. So if we're going for leasing, we'll still need the 850,000 and the 300,000.
No, Chair, we actually replaced that with the leasing costs.
Okay, so we don't need to find the 850,000 and not borrow it.
No, but we haven't had the final report, so I want to make sure that we're right on the financing of that. So we've challenged some of the figures. So if we have to buy it, it's most likely that we'd have to borrow to fund that. So we're looking at the cost of borrowing versus the leasing cost.
Councillor McVeigh.
Just an observation to the Mayor. When he meets Mr Heseltine and Badness, we do hope that you are ready, that they might be possibly going for a unity. I don't know, is he coming as a government representative, or to whom is he on behalf of the
Is Michael Heseltine's Baroness William, our acting as government advisors on the devolution deal. the proposals aren't unitary. You know, what they're currently discussing is a combined authority where the district councils retain their independence within a combined authority, and which is made up of the leaders of the 7 councils. Part of the deal and what's on the table at the moment is a directly elected mayor for Cumbria. The meeting on Monday is just the next stage in some pretty detailed negotiations. I've had a document through, and the figures are missing off it. We've got X's here and X's there, and apparently that's about commercial sensitivity, but the X's will be replaced by numbers when we get down there Thursday. But in terms of the whole devolution revolution is the only way that we can sign up for that is if it's passed through 7 councils. It's not something I can go down there and think that looks okay, I'll sign Copeland into that. It's what I'm down there for is to press that we get the very best deal for this borough, and then when we bring it back to council, we can present it as such. And I've made commitments at the very start of this process when I present the final devolution report to this council. There'll be no sway from me one way or another. I will present the facts as they are, and the benefits and downsides of it. It's a decision for every elected member of this borough to make. Just from my opinion, just on Councillor Bradshaw about the green waste, the 177,000 that you requested, where we're going to find the money. The money wasn't put into the 2016-17 budget. We put it in 17-18 because we'd allowed another year for consultation, so that money was never in the budget for the next year.
Councillor Poland. Councillor Gill.
Yes, Chairman. In relation to what Councillor Barber raised in relation to green waste charges, if consultation has to be meaningful, it has to be a meaningful consultation, and it was rejected by people. However, I wasn't happy, and neither was overview and scrutiny, in the respect of how this consultation was taking place. The questions didn't seem appropriate, and I could have sat down and just ticked them and give you all the answers without going to anywhere else. They were so, in my view, very naive. What the Overview and Scrutiny Committee offered, and I hope the officers and the Mayor will take it on board, is that we do overview before the next budget, next year, and we are involved in setting the questions and they go out to consultation so that the consultation is seen to be very meaningful.
Councillor Gill, I couldn't agree more. It's the first time the authority's gone through a mayoral consultation process. What we have endeavoured to do is create as much consultation as we possibly could. And on the positive side, last year we had 13 responses, which is pretty paltry. We're up, 500% in terms of responses. So we're making progress in terms of public engagement. What we've also done is a significant level of public meetings all across the borough. In addition to that, as I said earlier, I went and spoke to over 125 people at Britain's Energy Coast Business Cluster, which are key movers and shakers in this area who need to buy into what we're doing to make the difference. There was another 20 down at Millen. It's I've got to take on board. It's the start of the process, and I'd love to see as much public engagement and getting the community of Copeland as involved as possible in everything that we do. With the public meetings, where the last ones weren't as attended as the first round, and the dark night, 6 o'clock, just finishing, probably wasn't the best times for running it. But what we're going to try and do now with the public meetings is over the course of of the next year, the council and the executive meetings are going to be going around the borough. We've got an executive meeting on the 11th, which is in Seascale, and we're linking the public meeting to the executive meeting, so the public can come along if they choose to and attend the executive meeting and then stay on for the public meeting, and all the executive will be there. You know, and in terms, again, it's about a coordinated approach from us all, because you know, about getting public engagement, buy into what we're trying to do is not just my responsibility, it's the responsibility of every elected member that sits in this chamber. And you know, what I'll be, you know, one of the suggestions I'll put forward for consideration is that when we do the 4 public meetings during the summer, I will be asking each councillor to invite 10 of their constituents along. And what I will do alongside that is guarantee to get 10 different people to each one of the public meetings, and in that way we'll get over 600 people through. And what we'll then do is we'll get questionnaires pre-prepared before we go to the public meeting. But in terms of anything that we can do to bring on board public opinion and embrace that, I'm all ears, and you know, absolutely, it's something that I will take to scrutiny. The clarity of the strategy, I hope, will help you formulate, you know, should help you be able to formulate questions even better. Well, you know, I think we've started a process of engagement that we can build on, and you know, I've got to say, from a standing start, I'm quite happy with the response that we've had this year. And what there was on those questionnaires, and I absolutely agree, there were pretty close questions, but there was a lot of free format where people could express views, and there's written really sort of constructive views that's really made me think, and they've actually been incorporated into what we've done.
Councillor Jackie Bowman.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to make a comment about the consultation. I can't see how it can be a budget consultation without figures. That's my opinion. My question is about a paragraph in the Treasury Management 3.1, current portfolio positions, and this is in no way anything detrimental about Fiona. In the event of a need to borrow further, the Section 151 officer has delegated powers to undertake the most appropriate form of borrowing. Now that, to me, leaving that responsibility to one person, I can't swallow that at all, I'm afraid. Not one responsible to our constituency.
George, what's that?
I can share from an officer perspective, but it may need a policy discussion. That's been in the financial regulations for, I think, as long as the council's been operating, and certainly as long as I've been here. The issue that we come across operationally is that tomorrow might be the absolute best day to borrow if we were in a borrowing position. There isn't time to go through a number of decisions to get that approval, but what I have, and I got asked this at Overview and Scrutiny Committee as well, if we have to do it, I have to report it immediately to the portfolio holder, and I have to report it through to the next available executive. That report then is seen by Audit and Governance on Treasury, and is also seen by the OSA Performance Subcommittee. So it would be retrospective, you're right, but it's to allow that operational efficiency so I can make the deal on the day. So it does come down to a trust of the 151, that's what it is, but it is a very hard one for councillors because it can be a lot of money. So I appreciate the point, and I don't take it personally.
Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. Mike, unlike you, I do not really support the idea of commercialisation. On the other hand, I see it as an inevitable consequence of government policy in cutting back finance to local authorities, and on that basis I will support you to the hilt in what you're trying to do. What I would stress, however, is that for me, local government primarily is about the maintenance and expansion of services for our local people. And it does worry me that the amount of effort that's going to be put into the commercialisation agenda might take away from the effort in providing those basic services. I know that you see the two as inevitably intertwined, which they are. We need the money to deliver the services. But can I just request that every effort be made to keep in mind that our prime function is providing services and not having to raise revenue.
I couldn't agree more. You know, that is what councils exist to do. But to provide those services, you need finance to do it, and it's a means to an end. You know, as I said, it's not something I've invented. It's being used by councils up and down the country, and it's being used very, very successfully. It's the way forward. You know, because I just don't want to see us. You know, my ambitions for Copeland go beyond maintaining the status quo. It's about improving services, improving lives, and the whole thing in the vision that we have for Copeland is to make it a better place for everyone to live, work and visit. Thank you.
Councillor John Bowman.
Thank you, Chairman. We keep referring back to the previous administration. I'm not going to turn around and count how many people are in this room that were the previous administration, and the officers, because officers make recommendations. The councillors should make the people sitting on the front bench that were part of that administration, that were part of chairs of committees, and time again was blaming the people that have left this organisation. This is wrong. There is a lot of good work, and there has been a lot of good work taken out. The well bank scheme was actually, I applaud you and Keith for what they've done representing the Lake District National Park. But you know better than anybody what hard work went into that scheme, and Trudy Harrison, who worked, I'm going to say her socks off. She really did, and she still is. And you know, it's wrong to blame the previous administration for everything that's gone wrong. And I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, everything that's gone right since May, you take the credit for. It's totally wrong.
Right, teacher. Your first point, John, I since I came into office, I've not looked to blame anybody for anything. You know, I came here and done a full review of everything that goes on. Some of it gets done better than other parts, but it's an evolving business that in a transitional phase, you need to review exactly where you are to go forward. At no time have I ever stood up and blamed anybody. When I find things that aren't as they should be, my only focus is on putting them right as they should be. And then, you know, I'm not taking credit for everything that's happened to me. You know, I've got, you know, the leader of the Conservative Party and the leader of the Labour Party and another executive member who work with me closely, and a team of first-class officers who are all working hard to improve things that weren't working so well and to maintain things that were working so well. And I completely refute any allegation that I've been in a situation where I blame anybody for anything. But I'm pretty keen that where things go wrong, that I fix them.
Mr. Mayor, just a supplementary, I didn't blame the elected mayor. What I said was, the blame is being put fairly and squarely on the previous administration.
For
what? That
blame the
is
present.
wrong.
For what and for by whom?
Well, right. I'm not going to list them, Mike, and I'm not going to have a meeting separately with you, but you need to understand the good work that the previous administration did, the well bank, the dilapidated buildings, and if there wasn't enough money in the dilapidated buildings budget, it wasn't the elected members' problem, it was the officers' problems. And time again, we've been told, and I had an email reply from you, that it was the decisions of the previous administration, the elected members, right, not the recommendations from officers. And I know how hard these officers work. I probably know better than most. And it is unfair to blame the previous administration. probably 50% of that in previous administration are in this room.
Well, John, I did respond to your email. You asked me who the previous administration was, and my response and the exact words were, the previous administration were the elected members from 2011 to 2015. From May, when I got elected, along with the current councillors, that is the current administration. That doesn't sound to me like a blaming anyone, that's just explaining the fact. And the previous administration before the previous one was from 2007 to 11, and on and on. You know, it's just a case, and that was, this is, but there's no attempt at any time to try and apportion blame to anybody for anything. You know, where we are is we set off as a new council, and what I set out to do was establish exactly what the starting point. And yes, there's been good work done, and yes, that is recognised, and where there's good work and processes, they'll remain in place and go forward. Why would I change what's working? Where things could work better, of course we'll alter it. And 2 to 3 years down the line, if some of the things that happen under this administration that I lead aren't working, I'm not just going to carry on digging a hole, I'm going to change them as well. I'll put my hand up and say, yes, I tried it, it didn't work, and I've got to reevaluate and do it all over again. But, you know, I'll come back to the point, nobody is blaming anybody for anything, and I'm happy and do work with every single councillor that sits in this chamber, from whatever party, because, you know, I don't see colours. You know, all I see is the future of this borough and what we need to deliver. I pay due respect to everyone who sits in the house. You know, we've got overview and scrutiny led by one party, and reported the chairman of that, and we run decisions by him before they're made. I've got executive members who challenge, you know, some of the decisions that I'm making, and I've got a team of officers around me, not just to say yes sir, no sir. You know, they're around me because they do challenge, because, you know, I don't think I'm always right, and I need that challenge in there to make sure that we get the right decisions going forward. Blame, don't know where you're in, because I've not seen anybody get blamed for anything.
Sorry, Councillor Ball, I think you made your point, it's been noted. Councillor Bradshaw.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I get back to the report? During your presentation, Mr. Mayor, you said there's been 50,000 thrown in for social inclusion policy. I think it was from North West Water.
United Utilities.
Sorry,
United
Utilities. On the 7A on the agenda, there's 2 things I'd like. On the strategic objectives on page 29 to 30, there's nothing in there that which look as though they may be key performance indicators on social inclusion. And I know you haven't done the policy yet, I don't know whether it's being done. As a member who's very involved with social inclusion, I would like to be involved in pulling that policy together if possible. But you did say, if you could explain on 2.12, I understand what you're doing. You're going to measure the strategy on performance indicators, and it says you're going to have baselines to start the strategy period and report them quarterly. And it says the PA progress will require an annual customer survey in addition to the existing service-based customer feedback. Comments to refine the following current shortlist of PI options are still being received. Can I ask how at the moment, because if it's an online survey, we've got to be aware that a big percentage of our customers are either elderly or can't use computers or are isolated. So I'd like to know how you engage with them. And I know we used to have customer focus group meetings. I'm not sure whether we still have those or not, but how are we actually going to talk to the customers?
That is the very thing that we're trying to tackle. You know what we've set out in terms of the vision and the strategy is where we're trying to get to, and to build the steps to get there is about being inclusive, and you are very welcome to join putting that policy together. You're following overview and scrutiny, Council Holiday, the young version. Sorry. You know, who professionally works in that sector expressed an interest, you know, because, and you know, this is the type of thing I'm trying to encourage, where people can see where we're going and they can see what outcome we're trying to achieve. You know, the said council is probably far better qualified to pull that kind of policy together than what I am. And that's the type of thing that we're trying to foster within this organisation. If everybody knows where you're going, they know how they can best contribute to help get you there. And you know, I welcomed you know, Mark coming in and volunteering himself, as I do yourself, and when we pull the briefing together to start formulating that policy, I'd be delighted for you both to join us. And as I say, you've both got experience in that sector that can help us greatly and have a better chance of getting that policy right.
One more speaker now to close.
Sorry, can I have a supplementary, please? Thank you. Yeah, can I go back to the report, because I still don't understand how you're going to get customers to look at the performance indicators, the mechanics of doing that.
Well, you know, I'm looking for ideas. You know, we you know, clearly everyone doesn't use the internet. You know, one of the things that we will try and do is through the public meetings, and when we are engaging face to face with the public, asking them to complete them at that time. You know, as we go through next year, we're getting public meetings and everyone can buy in what we're trying to do. You know, councillors are all inviting 10 people along to attend those meetings, and we're getting that level of attendance. We'll have that documentation prepared at the meeting, and that will support that. But you know what I'm proposing is an outcome. We know where we are, we know where we're trying to go, and I'm all ears for anyone who's got any ideas that can help develop that.
Councillor Luthwaite, and this is the last speaker.
All right. I wanted to ask a question about the PFI, and I quote, "It's a noose round the council's neck." How much money have we managed to save by renting out the two top tiers, you know, upstairs?
At the moment, it's commercially sensitive information because there's another party involved in that, and there's still some of the negotiations to complete. But it is a benefit, a significant benefit to this organisation. On what we've done with renting out at the moment and renting out of that building, and there's other, you know, as I spoke earlier, you know, we're looking to be as financially efficient as we possibly can be, and you know, we'll go through the PFI and everything's being looked at, and anything that we can do, and any opportunities that arise to create more efficiency, that way we will take them.
There you go. No, it's not. As I said, at the end of the speakers, close the meeting. If the mayor wants to sum up, I'll allow him to do that.
No, it's just about the prison fire station. I got a phone call today from one of the firefighters, Bruce Taylor, and he just wants to say thanks to everybody that supported the prison fire station, because County Council retained it, not just them, but the whole of the fire station that are part-time, and so just I want to say thanks very much to everybody involved.
Yeah, I can do. Yeah, thanks everybody for attending tonight and contribution into the meeting. You know, I shouldn't at the start say, well, public and it's nice on the. We had quite a lot of staff here earlier, which is good, which is encouraging as well. And it's nice to see two of our new aldermen here to keep Aussie company. You've got 30 years of meetings to go, guys, to keep it with him. And you just thought you were leaving the council. Yeah, you know, in summary, you know, as I said during the presentation, I think we've got a progressive, ambitious and challenging budget. And I think a clear plan and a clear strategy that not only we can see, but as council members, partners who work with us can see that, buy into it. And as I said, I'm optimistic for the future of Copeland, and 9 months down the line, I'm even more optimistic that we'll be in a very different place. Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank you for coming, and can I take this report as being noted? Thank you for your attendance today, and I conclude the business of the meeting. The next meeting of council will be held on 6 p.m. on Thursday, 26th February, here at the Corporate Centre, where we will consider the executive full budget proposal. Thank you, and